Well, hello, Ani, everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar, Electric Vehicles 101. My name is Benjamin John, and I'm the Climate and Energy Programs Manager for the Georgian Bay Minidoh-Gami Biosphere, as well as your facilitator for this evening. Also joining me from the Biosphere is Allison Covert, our Climate and Energy Programs Coordinator, who will be leading all of the tech in the background. So if you're having any issues with Zoom, Allison will be able to help you this evening. Please know that we will be recording today's session. We want to make this accessible to those that weren't able to make it, as well as offer you the opportunity to review any of the topics that were discussed today. So we'll be following up this webinar with an email with a link to that recording. We'd also like to encourage you to use the question and answer tool that Zoom offers. If you do have a question at any point during the webinar, please put it in there and we'll do our best to get back to you in the time that we have. And we should have a question period, time for some questions at the end. Before we do begin, though, I'd like to take this moment to acknowledge the land on which we're at today. The Georgian Bay Biosphere is situated within the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850 and the Williams Treaty of 1920 and located on Anishinaabe territory. Our organization under UNESCO acknowledges the rights of Indigenous peoples in this territory and works towards respectful and reciprocal relationships as we are all caretakers of the land. So thank you again for joining us this evening, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Benjamin John. I'm the Climate and Energy Programs Manager at the Georgian Bay Biosphere. If this is your first time hearing about the Biosphere, it is one of 19 UNESCO World Biospheres located in Canada. And this biosphere in particular stretches 200 kilometers along the eastern coast of Georgian Bay and was designated by UNESCO back in 2014. This designation comes as our region is ecologically unique, as it contains the largest freshwater archipelago or series of islands on Earth. As an organization, we are a registered charity with an office located in Parry Sound, Ontario, and we rely on grants, partnerships, and donations to carry out our work in the fields of environmental conservation, climate action, sustainable communities, culture, and education. It's our goal as an organization to help inform and educate, as well as facilitate within these areas as a way to inspire collaborative partnerships for learning and action that work towards building a balance between humans and nature within that Georgian Bay Biosphere region. And I'm excited to share with you that today's webinar is part of a larger webinar series that we're holding, as well as a project focused on electric vehicles. And we'd like to thank the Mike Brigham Foundation and Lakeland Solutions as some of our partners who have made this possible. If you enjoy today's webinar, I highly encourage you to head over to gbbr.ca/events and register for some of the upcoming webinars that we're holding, as well as future events. We have some great speakers lined up, and whether you're an EV expert, have some knowledge on electric vehicles already, or are just beginning to learn about them, there's going to be something here for everyone. And we'd also like to mention that our friends at Climate Action Muskoka are also holding a free EV car show at the Bracebridge Fairgrounds on May 27th. From 10 to 1, where they will be showcasing different types of electric vehicles. So if you're interested in attending that event and learning more about it, please feel free to reach out to me during today's session or after as well. To begin today, I'd like to start by putting out a poll to everyone to better understand what might be holding you back from, say, purchasing an electric vehicle. So in a moment, you should see a question and some responses appear on the screen. There it is there. And as mentioned, we'd like to know if there's anything holding you back from an electric vehicle. Perhaps it's the cost. Maybe you're concerned about range, but whatever it is, you can list it on the poll here, and we have a few options. And we'll just give you a few moments here to record your answers. So I'm seeing a lot of responses coming in. Thanks, everyone. Again, you're able to record multiple answers within that poll, but some of the more consistent responses we're seeing is that there's a feeling that EVs are more expensive than gas vehicles and that they don't have enough range to meet driving needs. So we'll give everyone a few more seconds just to record their responses. Great. Thanks everyone for your feedback. So as mentioned, some of the more, if you're not able to see what these responses are, most commonly what we're feeling is that EVs are more expensive than gas vehicles and that they don't have enough range to meet driving needs. And these responses, you might be comforted to know that they're actually quite common beliefs that people have about electric vehicles and are barriers that are holding them back within considering electric vehicles as their next vehicle option. And I'm quite confident today that our guest speaker is going to be able to address some of these concerns that you may have. So without further ado, I'm very excited to introduce you all today to our guest speaker, Cara Clairman, President and CEO of Plug and Drive. Plug and Drive is a nonprofit organization that is a recognized leader in the electric vehicle space, focusing on accelerating EV adoption through outreach and education for over 10 years. They've developed a number of award-winning programs that encourage consumers and fleet operators to make the switch from gas to electric. Cara herself has more than 25 years experience working in the environmental and sustainability fields, including 12 years working at Ontario Power Generation, initially as their environmental lawyer and then later as their vice president of sustainable development. Cara is the 2017 recipient of the Women in Renewable Energy's Women of the Year Award and the 2021 winner of the Al Cormier EV Leadership Award from Electric Mobility Canada. She lives in a 2 EV household, which includes a Chevy Bolt and a Tesla Model 3. So Cara, we're very excited to have you here today. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. I'll pass things over to you at this time.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm gonna just share my screen and we'll get on the roll here. Okie dokie. You guys will tell me when you see it as a full screen. Yep. Okay, let's try again. Just 1 second. Oh. You guys seeing anything?
We can't see your slides, Cara.
Okay, so something happened there. Let's try again. All right, well, while we get this rolling, as you heard, I'm the president and CEO of Plug and Drive. I've been at this for more than 12 years, and I'm going to talk to you about EV, all the issues that we typically hear people concerned about with EVs, and hopefully by the end, you will be thinking, well, maybe I can consider one for my next vehicle. Okay, I'm going to try sharing again. Okay. I see it, but I can't seem to move it out of the, oh. This thing is in the way. You can see it only little, right?
That's correct.
It's hiding under the bar here, and I can't get to the place where you, I'm having a little bit of trouble because it won't move out of the, it's hiding under the bar, that the zoom bar, and I can't move that. So I can't get to the spot where you make it screen size. So I might need one of you guys to share it. It's hiding. Great.
I've shared
I
the
see it
slides,
now.
Cara.
Thank you. Sorry about that. You know what? This happens every now and again. So thanks again. So you can go to the next slide. I'm going to talk about just 2 minutes on Plug and Drive, and then I'm going to spend the bulk of my time talking to you about the benefits of EVs and why they make sense. So Plug and Drive, as you heard, we're a nonprofit all about accelerating EV adoption. We focus on education as our way of spreading the EV love, and most of our we do quite a lot of virtual events like this, but we also do a lot of in-person test drive events, and we do find the test drive is really, really important. So you're going to hear that throughout today, that if you are thinking about it, that we're going to try to encourage you to find a place where you can go and test drive a vehicle. Next slide, please. So we do this in a number of ways. The main ways we have is we have a bricks and mortar facility where you can come and visit, test drive cars, learn all about it. No pressure to buy anything. We don't sell cars. Next slide. We also, of course, take our show on the road, and we've been in the Georgian Bay region numerous times. We've been up to Southampton. We've been in Owen Sound. We've been in Muskoka. We've been all around that region, and we bring our show on the road because we know not everyone is in striking distance of the GTA, and also having an event right in your community is really handy for people and helps people sort of see, oh, like I could do this with the life that I live where I live. We typically would bring the cars and the chargers, and we offer test drives right at home. Next slide. And then we have something that I would say is like a hybrid between our physical bricks and mortar and the center, which is in Toronto, and the one-day road shows. And it's sort of somewhere in between there. It's a trailer. We call it the mobile EV education trailer, or the MEET. And its trailer doesn't really do it justice. It pops open, and it's like having a little EV discovery center right in your town. We've taken this to many locations across Ontario and actually across Canada now. We have 2 of these mobile trailers, one on the East Coast and one on the West. So we're able to get to lots of cities. If you want to see if it's going to be somewhere near you, you can look at our event link, which is down at the bottom here, and you can see if it's going to be available for you to visit. And basically we bring the cars along and offer test drives and learning in your local community. Next slide. And of course, like the Biosphere, we are a nonprofit, and we're all only able to do what we can do with the help of our sponsors. And so it's really important to always appreciate those sponsors every chance you get. So I just like to express my gratitude to all the sponsors who make our work possible. Without them, we really couldn't do what we're doing. And so we're so grateful that they see what we're doing as important enough to help support it. So thank them very much. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to start on why EVs make sense from an environmental point of view. Now, not all of us are persuaded to choose an EV just based on environment, but it is a really important factor. And of course, EVs, why are EVs sort of risen to popularity really is driven by climate change. And cars are a significant source of our greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, here in Ontario, transportation is the #1 source of emissions. And that's true in many jurisdictions around the world. Everywhere in Canada, transportation is either #1 or #2. So you really can't tackle your climate goals or in Canada or in any province without trying to tackle transportation. And transportation is actually one of the easier ones to tackle in comparison to industrial emissions or residential as the other large emitters. And so that's why EVs sort of present such a great opportunity, because it's actually relatively easy for someone to switch from a gas car to an electric car compared to changing out a whole industrial process. So it makes sense that it's sort of a choice that is being focused on by a lot of governments around the world. Next slide. And why switching to an EV makes so much sense here in Ontario is because our electricity is already pretty clean. Here in Ontario, we're like mostly nuclear power, some hydroelectric, some renewables, which is mostly wind and solar, and a little bit of natural gas. And that natural gas, which is the only fossil fuels left on our electricity grid here, they typically only run at peak times. So when I say peak time, that's typically like, let's say from 3 in the afternoon until dinner time, something like that. That's usually the peak time when all the offices are running, and then you get home and you start dinner and all those things. That's peak electricity demand. And so fossil fuel is very easy to turn on and off. And so typically it runs at the peak because it's easy to turn on and then easier to turn off. And so natural gas in Ontario is used as a peaking operation just when we need it on those peak times. Nuclear and hydro is what we call baseload electricity. That's kind of electricity that's kind of running all the time, 24/7. So if you plug your electric car in at night, or frankly, plug anything in at night, you're actually plugging into, nothing is zero emissions, but you're plugging into almost zero greenhouse gas emission electricity, because natural gas almost never runs during the night. And so here in Ontario, where we're running nuclear and hydro pretty much 24/7 as base load, nighttime is probably the cleanest time. And it's also the cheapest time because we have time of use pricing. So electricity is cheaper at night. And we also have an excess of electricity at night because we don't really turn nuclear and hydro on and off. It runs all the time. And so that means at night, when everyone turns everything off, that electricity is being dumped, that we don't have a use for it. So it's being dumped into New York State and into Quebec at a loss of money every night. And so we're not only doing the province a big environmental favor, plugging our cars in at night, we're actually doing them an economic favor, because we're helping to prevent them from the loss of money on all that nighttime electricity that is surplus, that we don't need. And so there's actually a strong economic, when people say like, why would we give rebates to people to buy electric cars? Well, we do it because there's a societal benefit to the emission reduction. We all benefit from that. And then there's also this big economic benefit, whereas all the money that you put into electricity, that goes to the government. Most of the electricity assets are owned by the government. They're owned by you and me. And so by plugging in at night, you're actually helping your local economy, or plugging into local jobs, local infrastructure, and it makes a lot of economic sense. So for all those reasons, EVs make a load of sense here. And now I'm going to just switch gears a little bit to talk about more than just the environmental, but the other values to you as a consumer. Next slide. Yeah. So I've already explained why they're lower emitting electricity, much lower emitting than gas. But we used to hear from a lot of people, well, that's great. You know, they care about the environment, of course, but you know, there isn't a make or model that I like. I'm waiting for, you name it. I'm waiting for Toyota, or I want an SUV or a pickup truck. And you know, that used to be actually a significant barrier to adoption. You know, now there's more than 50 makes and models of EV available in Canada, and by this time next year there'll be 100. And so this issue of, well, there isn't a make or model that I like is really going away as an issue. It was a real issue a couple of years back. less and less of an issue now. Basically every type of car is available and almost every manufacturer has one, if not more than one. Next slide. The other one we used to hear a lot about was range. Well, okay, I know they're better for the environment, and okay, maybe there's an SUV for me or a truck, but I drive too far. Well, probably it's not true. Probably it's not true. Now, there's going to be some of you who really do drive a lot, but most of us actually don't. In fact, the stats will tell you that 80% of Canadians drive 50 kilometers or less each day. Now, we all drive maybe a long trip once in a blue moon. And all I can say about that is if it's a one-off trip that you do once or twice a year, that should not stop you. Most of the EVs on the road today are having a range of 300, 400, even 500 kilometers. And so for most of us, for our daily needs, it's tons. It's just for that one-off road trip. But we don't buy a car for the 1%, buy it for the 99%. And the one trip or two trips a year, you can rent a car, take a train, switch with your in-laws, whatever. What I used to do, now I have a pretty long range EV, so I never need to worry about it. But when I used to drive a Nissan Leaf, which only had about 140 kilometers, which was fine for the city, but not great for a road trip, I would swap with my brother-in-law who had a minivan. And so that one trip I would do with the kids in the minivan. And so there are a lot of solutions out there, and you save so much money driving an electric car that it's worth it to rent a car the odd time. And so let's move to cost. We hear it every day. I love the idea of an EV, but they're just too expensive. And this is actually a myth. Some EVs are expensive, sure. There's luxury EVs that are very expensive. But there are actually a lot of EVs in the in the 30s, lots of EVs in the 30s. There's a rebate of $5,000 from the feds. But the key thing is the cost of running an EV is so much cheaper than a gas car that even if you pay more upfront for the car, you're saving over time. So let me just give you an example. So if you're paying about $1.40 a liter for gas, electricity is about 1/5 of that. I'm paying about the equivalent of 28 cents a liter. And so at a 1/5 price, depending on how much you drive, you're going to save at least $2,000 a year on fuel alone. So the savings are significant, and the challenge is persuading people, pay now to save later. You're going to save year over year, and you will make back the difference in the upfront cost, which is a little bit more. If you're comparing the exact same EV to the same model of gas car, it is a little bit more, but you are going to make it back. And so we just have to show you the value that it is there. And a lot of times this is hard for people to believe, right? But it really is there. Next slide. So if you're not sure this math works out for you, I really encourage you to take a look at this tool on our website. It's called Find Your EV Match. It's a micro site to our website. So you can either just go to Plug and Drive and you can find it, or you can go straight to this micro site, which is ev.pluganddrive.ca. And basically this tool will allow you to enter in your existing gas car, make and model, year, and then every gas car that's on the market is in there. And then you can compare it to any EV that you're interested in. And it will produce a graph for you with your monthly savings. And so you could see for your specific driving, you enter in like how much you typically drive. It will show you your benefit, your economic benefit. And you will see when that magic point is where you've saved as much as the additional you paid, and then you're just in the savings after that. It's really easy to use. So I really encourage you, if you're not convinced that you're going to save money, to check it out. Now, of course, if you drive more, you're going to save more. So if you're a very low kilometer driver, it takes longer to make back your make your payback. But if you drive the typical, which is the Canadian average is about 20,000 kilometers a year, you're going to save. You're going to save at least $2,000 a year, probably more. Next slide. So I did want to mention, since a lot of you might live remote or rural, that there's a lot of trucks now that are available. It's kind of exciting because a couple of years ago, there really wasn't anything. And trucks are actually a whole new, not just for, personal use, but for fleets and delivery and all sorts of other uses, which is pretty exciting. And I'm not going to focus on fleets because this is more of a consumer presentation, but if you are interested in more information on fleets, you can reach out to us. But Geotab, which does a lot of data analysis on fleets, has done an assessment of all the fleets that they deal with, and they found that at least 30% of the vehicles in the average fleet could be electrified today. And so there's a lot of good substitutes already, and more all the time. In the medium duty, which is like pickup trucks and bigger than pickup trucks, like an e-transit or a small cube van, those kinds of vehicles, there's actually lots of choices. And if you're interested in learning more about that, I've put a link here to Electric Autonomy, has a really good listing of the medium duty. Our website's really good for light duty, but we don't have a lot on the medium duty. So I thought this would be helpful. Next slide. And by the way, we're not just electrifying cars anymore. We're electrifying boats. And given this was Georgian Bay, I thought, well, I should throw a few boats in here. There's ferry boats being electrified. You see it at Wolf Island in Kingston if you go there in the summertime. And also Vancouver to the islands and Victoria, they have some electrified ferries there and more growing. I was in Norway a year ago and they had tons of them. And a lot of motorboats now. This is just one, but there's a lot of different motorboats electrified. Fantastic because they don't spew anything into your beautiful lakes, and have lots of power, and give you a really nice quiet ride. None of that loud noise that you can't hear over. So if you're interested, you should Google. There's actually quite a few options. It was really expensive, but the prices are coming down. So if you're interested, take a look for that. There's more and more on the market all the time. Next slide. And of course, we're seeing a lot more electrified transit as well. The TTC has bought almost 300 electric buses. We're seeing them in Ottawa. We're seeing them all across the country, honestly. And what is sort of a topic near and dear to my heart is school buses. School buses are perfect for electrification. First of all, they typically just drive an hour, then they sit for a few hours, then they drive an hour, and then they sit all night. So it's not like a transit bus that has to be able to drive all day. So a school bus is perfect. Plus, school buses are actually huge emitters and they idle a lot, and the air pollution goes right into the vehicle where our kids are sitting. In fact, studies have shown that the air quality inside a school bus is much worse than it is outside the school bus. And so pretty exciting to see Lion Electric, which is a Canadian made bus. They make it in Quebec, being sold all across the country and beyond. So in some school buses, even retrofitting, taking out the gas and putting in batteries along the bottom. So a lot of exciting activity in this space as well, helping us to reduce emissions from our transit fleets. Next slide. Okay, so that's where I'm going to end it on talking about sort of the benefits. We talked about the environment, we talked about economic benefit. I'm going to talk about health a little bit later, but those are the big ones. Those are the biggest concerns we get. We get like, why is it really better for the environment? And I don't believe I'm going to save money. Those will be like the top. And we did a little on range. But now I'm going to talk about charging, because this is a big, frankly, I mean, and all these concerns, of course, are legitimate because this is new and, you're not used to it. But before I get sort of into more detail on charging, I like to sort of do a lay of the land, because there's some lingo here and I want to make sure everyone's on the same page. So Charging an EV is really easy. It's just like charging anything. We're very accustomed to charging our phones, charging up. Maybe you have power tools you charge up, or a lawnmower that you charge and use a battery. It's really no different. It's just a bigger battery. So there's 3 levels that we talk about for charging. Very simple, 1, 2, 3. Level 1 is basically where you charge just from a 110 outlet, just a normal plug, the same plug you would plug your phone into. And that plug works for any EV on the market. So if you have one of these outside your house or in your garage, you're actually ready. You don't need anything more. Now, the downside of this is it's slow. It's going to be very slow. Now, if you choose a plug-in hybrid, like Ben was telling me that the Georgian Bay Biosphere just got the Outlander, Mitsubishi Outlander, that battery's got about 60, 70 kilometers in it. You don't need anything more than this. This is going to fully charge that overnight. Or so any plug-in hybrid, perfect, 110 is enough. Or if it's one of the older EVs that has a smaller battery, the 110 is fine for those too. Once you get into like a 300, 400, or 500 kilometer battery, and if you do actually drive far in a day, that's going to be too slow. So then we go up to what we call a level 2 charger. Level 2 is what a lot of people would install at home. It's basically when you hear the word level 2 or the words level 2, think dryer plug. That's all it is. It's just like a dryer or a stove plug. It's a 220 plug. It's nothing fancy. These type of chargers just plug right into a dryer plug. It can either be hardwired into your wall, or you can actually get one with a plug on it that just plugs right into a dryer plug. And these will charge your car a lot faster. So instead of getting 8 kilometers an hour, you can get about 30 kilometers an hour. That charges any EV on the market overnight. So even a largest battery Tesla easily fully charge overnight, even if you come home dead empty. So that's all anyone would ever have at home. You would never have a level 3 charger at home. When I say level 3, think like high powered charger, fast charger, quick charger, DC quick charger, supercharger. These are all words that kind of mean the same thing, level 3. And those you would find at a highway rest stop or a mall. Those are chargers that you would really typically only use on a road trip. Some people have to use these on a more regular basis if, for example, you live in a condo or multi-unit and you don't have a home charger. So then you might need to use these more. But most of us will only use these type of chargers on a road trip, and at home we're going to charge on level 1 or level 2. So that's really all there is to it. I assume people will have questions, and you can put them in the chat or in the Q&A, and I'm happy to address them. But that's sort of the lay of the land when it comes to charging. Charger at home is very simple. Next slide. You can buy a charger at home on this website, chargemycar.ca, with all the different makes and models of home chargers. Basically, like I said, it's a dryer plug with a wand on it. Some come with more bells and whistles than others, and so you'll see, you can compare them and see the different. Some have a long cord, maybe you have a long driveway, or it's going to be outside and you don't have a garage. These sorts of issues, if you want to, there's a few differences in features, but for the most part, level 2s are all pretty similar. Some of them have higher amps, and that means they will charge the car a little bit faster. Mine is a 30 amp, which is like kind of standard. To me, I don't see the point of charging faster overnight because my car is going to be sitting there all night anyway. But let's say you're somebody who, works on shift, or you come home and you're going to want to leave 2 hours later, then you might want a higher amp charger. But for most of us who are home all night, it really isn't important. So the sort of 30 amp is perfectly good, and it will easily charge your car overnight. Next slide, please. And I do get a lot of questions around, well, what am I going to do when I'm on the road? Fine, I'll charge mostly at home, but what do I do if I'm on a road trip? Well, of course, there's an app for that. These are 2 of the most popular apps for EV chargers, PlugShare and ChargeHub. This photo comes off of PlugShare. And basically it's an app that maps all the different chargers out there. And the little green dots are level 2 chargers. So you might, let's say you're going to a mall and you're going to be there for a couple of hours. You might just want to charge on level 2. And the orange is level 3. So that's quick charge when you need to get going. So you might, for a level 3, you might stop for half an hour, grab some food, check your phone, and then you're going to get on your way. Most level 3s, you're going to charge for like half an hour, 40 minutes. And they are actually getting faster all the time. So if you're on a road trip, it's totally doable. And this is the map that you would use to find them. And typically you would look at this the night before and click on this teardrop, and it would bring down the drop down on the left and tell you what's the address, how much does it cost, where on the site am I going to find this charger, when is it open, all the information you need. And so I just encourage you, if you are thinking of a road trip, to look at this the night before, because you want to make sure you know where you're going. And also the key thing, if you look at the little orange charger right in the middle of the screen, there's a little wrench inside that dot. And that little wrench means it's not available. That means it's either being maintained or it's being installed. And so you do not want to visit a charger with a wrench. And so I go on the night before, I check, and there's a check-in feature. So you can say, hey, somebody was here yesterday and this charger's working well and everything's good. So I feel confident I'm going to visit it tomorrow. And then also I know what brand of charger it is, and then I know how I'm going to pay for it. Next slide. These are just some of the different public chargers out there. There are a lot of different chargers. That's one of the pluses, is now there's just, they're putting them at gas stations. It's really growing. Every month they add about 50 chargers to the map. So it's great. There's more and more available. I want to be realistic with everybody though. One of the downsides is these are all just a tiny bit different. And so the first time you go to a new one, you might, just like, when you go to a new gas station or a gas station in another country and you're like, okay, I'm not sure exactly how this works. It's a little bit like that. There are instructions. Most of these, they don't all take a credit card, by the way. Some of them do and some of them don't. So again, when you look on that map the night before, you're going to see what brand it is, and you might want to download the app. And that way you can easily use it when you get there and you're not standing there trying to figure it out. Most of us who drive, I mean, I don't drive a ton, but I have a couple of these networks that I use more frequently, and I'll just, I'm a creature of habit. I'll typically just go back to those. I have some friends who have a app or a card for all of them, just in case. I don't do that, but I know people who do. Some of them, you can get a tap card and you just tap it on the machine. It's a little bit easier sometimes than using the app. If you're not someone who likes to use a lot of apps on a smartphone, there is like an actual card that you can get. And so, it's, we're still in the early days. A lot of these are consolidating. And I think eventually it's kind of like, when the bank machines were all independent and you couldn't use Interac. We're still a little bit in those days. And eventually these are all going to harmonize and you're going to have one card that's going to work for all of them. We don't have that yet, but we will. And so, like I said, I just plan ahead, to make sure, okay, I'm going to use a Flow charger and I have my Flow app and I know what I'm going to do. So it's all workable. And just remember, you're probably not doing this often. You're doing it once in a while. And you save so much money that it's worth it. Okay, next slide. I did want to mention, as we're doing a new study, that strangely, EV adoption right now is really skewed male. About 80% of the EV buyers are men. We don't really know the reason why. There's been some studies in the States, but there hasn't really been anything in Canada. And there's a lot of anecdotes like why you might be because people think it's kind of techie, or it might be concerns about safety, or it might be concerns about driving your kids around to tournaments and stuff, and it's gonna be difficult. We're not sure. Anyway, next slide. We are actually working on, with the Women in Renewable Energy, we're doing a study around this issue of women and driving EVs. So if you're interested, next slide, if you're interested in learning more about it, you could email this email address, zev@womeninrenewableenergy.ca. We're going to be doing a survey of women to ask them why are they concerned, more concerned than men are. And then we're going to try to solve some of those problems. It's a bit of a mystery right now as to why that is. And so we're trying to get to the bottom of it. Oh yeah, this is more information what we're doing. So we're doing a survey, we're doing EV education, and we're going to do a career fair, because also women don't seem to go into the EV industry at the same rates as men. So we're doing a whole bunch of work to try to get to the bottom of this. And so if you're interested at all, please do email us. Next slide. Okay, so I'm just going to spend 5 more minutes because I want there to be lots of time for questions. I'm going to talk a little bit about how things are going in Canada when it comes to EVs. So not bad, not bad. I know, like, you hear a lot from the government that, you know, we want to be a leader in this space. Right now, I would say we're not. ZEVs are now up to almost 1 in every 11 car purchases. So that's new cars. About 10% of new car purchases are ZEVs, which is good. It's progress. It's up a lot from 1 year ago. And the total EVs on the road is, you know, increasing by about 40% every year, which is great. So this, you know, this is something to be happy about, but it's not as good as some other countries are doing. Next slide. Here's some of the policies that you know that are helping. And you know, you got to hand it to the feds. They are trying. They've invested a lot of money in incentives, which is helpful. They're proposing a ZEV mandate. We don't have it yet, but it's on its way. And what a ZEV mandate is it's basically a law that would say, hey, you automaker, if you want to sell gas cars, you have to sell a certain percentage of EVs. So it might start at 1% and it'll creep up. And that way we can ever hit our targets of, you know, 100% by 2035. That's a pretty bold target, and we're not going to just get there overnight. So this is a way to have incremental targets all the way along. And I do think it's a good idea, because you visit a dealer now, a lot of dealers don't have a ZEV on the lot. So it's very hard to get people to adopt a car they can't try. And so the ZEV mandate will help address that. They're also putting a bunch of money into charging infrastructure, which is good. It's pretty good now, but we need more. It's good. They're also investing quite a lot in the medium and heavy duty. As I mentioned, there's a lot available there, but they're actually giving a big incentive on some of these bigger heavy duty vehicles. And that's really important because those are quite a lot more expensive. So that's good. And they're doing a whole bunch to clean up the grid in some of the provinces where the grid is still fossil fuel based. So, you know, lots of good stuff happening. That's amazing. Next slide. And the one area where I'd say here in Ontario, we're doing the best is manufacturing. There have been numerous announcements in the last year and a half about manufacturing of EVs right here in Ontario, or manufacturing batteries, or both. These red dots show you where those announcements are based. It's up to about 16 billion if you combine like what the feds and the province are investing in the plant, the GM plant in Durham region, the Ford plant in Oakville, Stellantis in Windsor, and there's a battery plant in Windsor, and then Volkswagen is putting a battery plant in St. Thomas, and GM is building the brake drop truck in Ingersoll. So there's just tons happening. This is really exciting. Now, it's great for jobs. It's great for the industry. It's great in lots of ways. It's not necessarily going to ensure that Canadians buy EVs, because these cars could all go to the States. It's an integrated market, and the US is our biggest partner. And typically in any of these manufacturing plants, 90% of the vehicles went to the United States anyway. But if we don't do more on the incentivizing people, these will all go to the States because they have like such better incentives than we have right now. So that's something that definitely has to be addressed if we want Canadians to buy the vehicles that actually you and I have helped to pay for these operations to exist. Next slide. And we know that we can do better on EV adoption because other countries are doing better. So if you look at what's happening around the world, I think I said we were 1 in 11 cars sold or ZEV. Globally, we're down to 1 in 7. So we're below the world average. And, the leaders are China, Europe, and the US. We're about 10th in that list. And, even taking into account our population. So we have a lot of catching up to do if we want to be considered a leader. And what could we do to improve? Well, we know because we know what other countries are doing. Next slide, please. You see here, Norway being the leading country right now is got, actually it's this quarter, this is the end of 2022, this quarter of 2023, it's even higher. They're selling 80% ZEVs. That's new car sales. So out of the cars that are being sold in Norway, 80% of them are electric and only 20% are gas or less actually now. And so pretty incredible. And how are they doing it? Well, they actually put a massive tax on gas cars so that they cost as much or more than an EV. And they also make it free to park in Oslo and free to drive in the HOV lanes, and they've done a massive push on infrastructure. And so, we don't have to look very far, and that's a wintry country with a lot of remote regions as well. And so we know it's possible. And I'm not necessarily saying Canada should do those exact things, but we have examples of what could be done. If we're serious, if we really want to kick it up a notch, we know what we could do. Next slide. So just to sum up, I think, manufacturing, we're doing great. We've got opportunities in mining and supply chain, batteries. So Canada is really poised to do well in terms of the EV industry. Great. We're doing pretty good on infrastructure. We got to do more, but it's coming along. And I think, the governments all the governments, federal, provincial, even municipal, they're all investing in infrastructure. That's good. I think education, we could do a lot better. Groups like the Biosphere and us and a whole bunch of other groups all across, we're all trying, but we're small NGOs. There's only so much we can do. There needs to be like a big campaign, with money to really help people understand the vehicles. And companies can step up. We don't have to always be looking to the government to solve everything. Companies can put in workplace infrastructure. They can offer better incentives to their employees. For example, if they have a company car, they can say, hey, we'll choose an EV instead, and you get a better payback for that. They can do educational things for their employees. So, we do that for all kinds of wellness related things. Why not for this? So there's a lot I think that companies can do, and we don't always have to be looking to the government to solve this. And finally, I would just say, we could use a couple of new policies that we don't currently have. We really need to update building codes. It's not required in the building code to put chargers in a lot of places. Some local municipalities have made it required to put it in multi-unit, but there's plenty of places in Canada where it's not required. Come on, if you want a building to be here for the next 50 years, that seems obvious that we should be thinking about the infrastructure for the parking. We should think about incentives for used EVs. It's a lot of Canadians don't buy new cars, and I think that would really kickstart the whole EV revolution, because a lot of people that could get into an EV if it was a used one would, but a new one is out of reach, and also that's an equity issue, and I feel like that's very important. And we need better financing. Right now, the financing for EVs is quite expensive. It's more expensive than for a gas car. There's no reason for that. And so, next slide, please. So those are, my main things that I would recommend that not that anyone's necessarily asking me, but that I would recommend that the government do to really kick us into high gear instead of sort of medium gear that we're in right now. And I'd just like to sum up with something about health, because I did focus on the environmental benefit. It's huge. Economic benefit to you individually, save money, good for the local economy. Electricity money goes into the local economy. Gas money mostly leaves. So lots of good economic and environmental reasons, but the unsung hero here is health. Public health in the GTA did a study with the help of Environmental Defense to say what would happen in the GTA if all the cars were electric. And the health benefits are massive. Cars cause a lot of air pollution, especially in cities. And we could actually save a lot of money in healthcare costs, saving from asthma, premature death from lung problems, all sorts of health related stuff that relate to transportation emissions. In fact, when they did the math, it came up to be about $10,000 in savings per car. So a huge value that we aren't even counting when we think about the benefits of EVs. If you want to learn more about this study, it was a very detailed modeling study. It has its own website. It's called clearingtheair.ca, and really impressive study that shows the value to all of our health if we switch to EVs. And so next slide, please. With that, I'm going to finish off. If you think, okay, I'm interested enough now to take the next step, we'd love you to come out to one of our test drive events. The link here is where all our different test drive events are. We do them all over the place, and hopefully there'll be one near you soon. So check that out. And if you have questions, of course, you can email me or ask me right now. So thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you for that, Cara. I think I can speak for, hopefully I can speak for a number of people in saying that was incredibly informative. And personally, anyways, I feel a lot less intimidated about, approaching the conversation of EVs and their benefits, both environmentally, economically, socially. So we do have some time for some questions here. Just a reminder to everyone, if you could please put your question that you might have in the Q&A tool, and we'll just go through the list of questions in the order that they come through. So to start the questions off, Cara, the first one we have is, are level 3 chargers that are found at gas stations universal? So for example, can a Kia charge on the same charger as a Tesla, Toyota, etc.?
So no, the answer is no, but it's a but, because it's not as difficult as it sounds. There are a couple of different standards. So Tesla has its own. Okay, so Tesla is somewhat unique. So the other cars right now cannot use Tesla chargers. The other chargers are all usable by all the other cars. Now there are still, even amongst the non-Teslas, 2 different standards. At level 2, it's universal. They're all the same. At level 3, the Japanese cars have one and all the other cars have another. Now, the good news there is, though, all the chargers that are for the other cars have both of those wands on them right now. So you don't have to worry about that. There's 2 different wands, so one that fits the Japanese cars and one that fits the rest. So that part is fine. But you can't go to a Tesla supercharger with a Toyota or a Kia. No. Now, you might have heard in the news that Tesla is going to open up some of their chargers to everybody else. In Canada, that hasn't happened yet, but that is apparently going to happen at some point, but it's not the case right now.
Thank you. Our next question is, what is the warranty like on an EV battery?
Most of the cars have an 8 8-year warranty on the battery. Some have 10. But the bulk of them have 8. And so you have to check the manual for that. And there is usually a kilometer limit as well. So it's usually 8 years and 160,000 kilometers or something like that. So for most of us, you know, you have quite a long period where you don't have to be too concerned about it. And just I'd like to add to that, that the studies are showing that the batteries are lasting extremely well. So there are now, like, just to be honest about it, the oldest EV on the road is about 12 years old. So we don't have data for 15 and 20 years yet. We only have 12. But for what we have, those 12-year-old batteries, for the most part, are still on the road. And the data looks like the battery actually is going to outlast the car. So that this idea that you're going to have to replace the battery during the life of the car is probably never going to happen. And so far, it happens extremely rarely. It's more of a lemon situation. It's not a typical situation.
The next question is with respect to, you mentioned used zero emission vehicles, and our question says that this is currently holding me back because they don't want to have a car payment. What should a consumer look for in a used zero emission vehicle? Do all models
Sure.
on the market have batteries that are, say, backwards compatible, meaning a newer, improved battery could be placed in an older model if need be?
Yeah. Well, if you're worried about battery, not to like plug the Chevy Bolt, but I mean, I do have one, but the Chevy Bolt, if you're thinking about used, the Chevy Bolt, it came out in 2017 and has about a 400 kilometer battery. The newer ones have maybe a little bit more, but it's not significantly different. And what happened was they had a recall on the batteries, and they recalled all the 2017, 18, and I believe 19 also, but for sure 17 and 18, and replaced all of them. And then my warranty, this just happened, and my warranty went back to 0. So you get a used Chevy Bolt from 2017 or 2018, it probably has a warranty on the battery that's gone back to year 1. So it's like a new one. And so that's an option for someone who's very concerned about that. The other thing, what I always recommend is that you do a state of health test on the battery of any used EV that you're going to buy. And that's a test that a dealer can do on the battery that can give you some comfort that the battery's in good condition. So those are a few things. If you have more questions about used, just call or email our office. I'm more happy to help you. And we have a guy that we know who sells all kinds of used EVs in the GTA, and he can help you. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank
It's
you.
bound
Sorry
to
about
happen
that.
once in any Zoom call.
It has to.
I had to screw up with the slide deck, so there has to be something.
Our next question asks, would the power grid in Toronto be able to handle the demand if, say, for example, 85% of all cars were EV?
Yeah.
I ask this because in the summer, we're often asked during heat waves to turn off their AC and other sort of electrical devices for capacity issues.
Sure. Well, look, it's a valid concern, of course. Now, the good news is it's not going to happen kind of like overnight. So there's lots of like planning that can be done to get there, right? Now, right now, most people are going to plug their EVs in at night. That's not everyone, but most people. And that's when we have the surplus on the grid. And I see in the questions, that's a question too. So maybe I'll hit 2 birds with 1 stone here, is that at night, of course, when everyone turns everything off, there's extra power that we're not using because nuclear and hydro run 24/7. It's cheaper to let it run than to turn it off. And hydro, you can't turn off because it's river running, right? So that hydro has to go somewhere. There's no place for it to go. And so we actually sell it off to New York State or to Quebec at a loss of money. They sell it either for $0 or a negative price just to get rid of it because it's cheaper to do that than to turn off nuclear plants. So if you plug in your car, you're actually like helping put money instead of that going to the States and being lost. You're actually buying that electricity. And even though you're buying it at the lowest price, it's better for the province. So that's what that was about, the wasted surplus hydro. But so in terms of Toronto Hydro or any of the local hydros, yes, I mean, if you came home and you plugged in at 5 p.m. dinner time, when everybody's running everything, actually, that's not good. That's not going to be good for the grid. And that is going to cause probably spikes and increased prices. So probably these local utilities are going to give you an incentive to move your use to the middle of the night. Now, right now, there's time of use pricing, which should encourage you to make sure you don't plug in your car till after 7. And most of the cars are really super smart. So it's not like you have to remember to go back out there at night and plug in your car. You plug it in, and on your app, you just set it. You just set it to charge after 8 p.m. or whatever. And that's what most of us do. So that's one way to help the grid. And then there'll be other programs like that. Just like you mentioned the air conditioning, there was this program in Toronto called Peak Saver, which was like where you offered to have the Toronto Hydro reduce your air conditioning when they were in a squeeze for power, and you got like a $50 credit on your bill or something. And, you know, there'll be those kinds of things that will crop up. Right now, there's lots of power for EVs. If even like, I don't know, 25, 30% of the people did it. Over time, yeah, well, we need more power, yeah. But I'd rather use low emitting power and increase the generation of that than, you know, use fossil fuels. So, you know, I mean, I always like to say, like, when it comes to the environment, nothing's for nothing. Everything has an impact, and just our living has an impact. And would it be better if we were all riding bikes and taking transit? Yeah, of course it would be better. But many of us live in places where that's not realistic. And so this is a much better car than a gas car. Is it perfect? No, it's not.
Thanks, Cara. Seeing that we're just about over time, I just want to limit it to 2 final quick questions that we have here, if that's all right. Our second last question is, what happens when the vehicle is no longer drivable? Where does the battery go? Are they going to landfills, or are there recycling opportunities that can happen for batteries as well?
Good question. So 2 things are happening. First of all, they're not even coming out of the cars yet. So we're not there yet because, like I said, the oldest car is 12 years old and they're still going. But at some point, it will not have enough juice for the car. It will still have juice though. It might charge up to 70%, but that might not be enough for the driving range. So what's happening is these batteries are going into what they call secondary use, which is they snap a whole bunch of these together and use it for backup storage for a building or for a charging station or a house or something. So this is a secondary use of the batteries. And then once that's done, they will be recycled. They are extremely valuable. They will never, ever go to landfill. There's the automakers want them. There's actually a bunch of companies in the GTA working on recycling, and there's a company called Li-Cycle, which has really looks very promising, where it looks like they can recycle almost all the lithium and a whole bunch of the rare earth metals, and we won't even need to mine it. We'll just be reusing what we have. So lots of promising, I mean, again, it's early days, but lots of promising results on that. So no, they will never go to landfill.
That's good to hear. And our final comment or question here is, can you quickly comment on EVs providing power to your home? We're seeing
Yeah.
a lot of emerging technologies called V2H.
Yeah.
And how does this help you during a power outage, for example?
Okay, sure. All right. Well, I'll do my best. It's kind of a complicated subject, but I'll do my best in 2 minutes. Okay, so something called V2G, vehicle to grid, or V2H, vehicle to home, or now what you hear a lot is V2X, which is vehicle to anything, everything. And basically the idea is right now power flows one way. You plug something in and the power goes into that something. So you plug your car in and the power goes one way into the car only. Vehicle to home is like that the power could also go the other way from your battery back to the house. So it's like your car is a backup storage. Like if you have Generac, or if you have a backup generator that's like a fossil fuel one, like a gas one, instead of that, you might have a block of batteries, or you might have the battery that's sitting in your car And when you need power and you're not using your car, you could run it back to the house. So if there's a power out, for example, you could use some of the power in your battery to run your stove or your heat if it's electric. That's what that's all about. It is something that is, I'd say right now, more piloted than really but in Japan, they're doing it more for real. Here in Canada and the US, there's a number of pilot projects going on. In fact, Hydro One has a pilot plan for this coming year, where they're going to have a bunch of homeowners do it. So we'll see, but it's an exciting opportunity into the future, which I think actually would help prevent us having to build more gas plants. Instead, we could rely on all those batteries that are out there and send the power back to the grid.
Thank you, Cara, for all of this information. I know I have definitely learned a lot today. I know we've gone a little bit over time, so I really appreciate you staying with us for a few extra minutes.
No problem.
If anyone does have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to myself at the Biosphere. Cara also has some contact information here that you can send your any additional questions to as well. So with that, I'd like to thank you everyone for being with us today, joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar that's going to be in May. So thank you. Have a good night,
Thanks
everybody.
for having me. Good night.
Thank you, Cara.